Do you want to know the top 10 books I recommend you read this year? I read hundreds of books on self improvement, and these top 10 books have made the most impact in my life, and I know they will do the same for you. To get this list, go to ahmadaustin.com/books. Again, that's ahmadaustin.com/books. Whether you're wanting to start a business, lose weight, write a book, or do anything great but feel resistance or fear, I feel these top 10 books will help you take the necessary actions to accomplish your goals. Again, go to ahmadaustin.com/books. Ahmad Austin, AHMADAUSTIN.com/books. If you enjoyed this podcast, I ask that you hit the subscribe button. Also, feel free to leave a 5-star review as well as share your favorite episode to your friends and family. This will help us rank higher in iTunes and increase the number of people who listen to the podcast. Hey, welcome guys. Welcome to Try to Fail. I'm your host, Ahmad Austin, and today we have an awesome guest. His name is Trent Jones. Trent Jones is going to be talking about meditating and the importance of meditating. He's also going to be talking about changing your thoughts and changing your thoughts in a way where it can change your life. He's going to be talking about telling the truth and how it can set you free, and also how to overcome your fears with this book that's called The 4 Agreements. So welcome my friend Trent Jones. I want to welcome Trent Jones. Today, he's a good friend of mine. We met in Toastmasters about a year ago, seems like now. He's a good friend. We do a lot of talking about certain things that one is about meditation, which we'll be talking about today. I want to give you guys a warm welcome to my friend Trent Jones. How you doing, Trent Jones?
Doing good, Ahmad. Thanks, man. That's a good introduction. And anytime you're starting with meditation, I think it's a wise thing to begin a day with, or even just a conversation. So I'm looking forward to this.
All right. Tell my audience a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I am an entrepreneur. I am learning how to make money without clocking in and doing the 9 to 5. I can't quite bring myself to doing that with my time here, my limited time on planet Earth. I don't want to spend doing, the traditional route of work. I want to add value to this world while I am still here. So I think I can best accomplish that by just using the things that I'm good at and the things that naturally appeal to me to make money, and it's simultaneously using that to add value to other people's lives. So the things that I've learned and the things that I've taught myself, or the things that I've explored, just trying to figure out a way to package that so that I can make the money necessary to fund my life, but also add value to other people's lives in the same way that those things have brought value to me. And you mentioned meditation. You mentioned, I don't know if you mentioned this or not, but yoga. Yoga is a big part of that. And you mentioned Toastmasters, and that's sort of the reason why I started doing Toastmasters, is because I wanted to get more comfortable in my delivery.
Okay.
And so in order to give this information to people, you have to be able to deliver it. And I think that's a very important part of it.
Now you do, you go into schools and do a little, I guess, how do you say, presentation on how to be mindful and how to meditate. Can you tell a little bit about that business that you have?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Right now, my girlfriend and I are working in local elementary schools, and we created a program essentially using music to present concepts like mindfulness, meditation, yoga. So we've been doing that for about a year on our own, and it's been successful. We were in one school, Calera, and we did about eight programs or so.
That's awesome.
And we actually got paid. One of the events, we made $450. That's after, though, we gave about 5 free performances in order to establish a relationship. And that's the thing that I'm learning, is you really have to show that you're willing to give of your time and of your effort, and that you're legit. It basically legitimized us in their eyes. And once they saw that we were committed, that we were serious about what it is that we're doing, then they were willing to come off some money. And, people, money's a big deal in our minds, because it represents energy, and it represents security. It represents safety. And we all need that. So people are slow to let go of money, but when it's something that they value, they will let go of it. And that's sort of what happened. But yeah, essentially we go into schools And we have an hour-long program, and we teach kids how to work with their own minds. A lot of what we do is improvisational storytelling. We have also stories that we've established and that we're using. But this year we kind of switched things around a little bit, and we're going to focus more on breathing. And our company name is Breathe Children Breathe.
All right, I like that.
And we want to teach kids how to use their breath to calm themselves down. And I've been listening to this guy here recently. His name is Andrew Weil, or maybe Andrew Weil or something. It's Weil. Weil. Andrew. I call it Andrew Weil. He's amazing. He's a really cool dude. Has a giant beard. Graduated from Harvard. He's got all the credentials you would want. But he established these breathing techniques that help to alleviate stress and anxiety. And essentially, I'll just explain just slightly my comprehension of it.
Okay.
He basically breaks the nervous system down into two parts. You have the sympathetic nervous system and you have the parasympathetic nervous system. Whenever we are under stress, whenever we're anxious, the sympathetic nervous system is activated. And this is a fight or flight system that goes into play, and it does physiological things on its own. So it's not directed by the conscious mind. So it's doing its own thing. Whenever this is activated, our breath is shallow. Blood is diverted from digestion into our core organs and into our brain or it's actually diverted from our brain into our core organs because the system's saying, we're under stress here, and we need to make sure that all systems are functioning, vital systems, key systems. So that's shallow breath, and that is when we are stressed and anxious. Then when the parasympathetic nervous system is activated, that's the concept of rest and digest. That means we're just lounging around, we're hanging out.
Would that be considered in the sleep category?
Yeah, it would be. You would be in a mode of safety. You would feel safe in this scenario, and your body diverts the blood to extremities. Your body is just happy, and it's doing its thing. It's in a very comfortable state. So whenever these two things are happening, or whenever that's happening specifically, is when our breath is deep. We're breathing in a healthy way, and you can train yourself to breathe like this. You can train yourself to activate that nervous system even in the midst of stress, and especially in the midst of stress. That's the whole point, is to take the time to do these exercises and develop a sense of like muscle memory or nervous system memory to whenever these things are going, whenever scenarios around us in life are going crazy, be able to access this calm inner peace that comes through our nervous system. And that's the cool thing. This is science. Gets away from mysticism or religion that's a little bit ambiguous. This is like, all right, what's actually going on inside of my body? And that's what I'm learning, and that's what I'm trying to express. And in doing it with kids, obviously you have to package this in a way. I can't explain it like this.
Right.
You got to be fun. If it
right.
ain't fun, they're not going to listen to this.
That's true.
They don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being a teacher, believe me, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I think meditation will highly cut down on a lot of behavior problems in the schools. I've seen a lot of students who I feel just need to relax sometimes, and they don't know how to. And I don't think some of us teachers don't know how to get our kids to relax and breathe or know the importance of it. So I think your program and your business would be perfect. Well, I know it is perfect for schools. I guess, again, it just comes down to getting the administrative people in the school systems to kind of get an idea of what you actually do and how it can help, their students.
Yeah, and that's the hurdle. Honestly, that's the hurdle that we're faced with, and especially in the South, is just being able to package this in a way. Yeah, to be able to put this in a way that is not contentious. We don't want any kind of association with any religious faith, or this should be scientific, and it should be from a place of objectivity. And anybody could look at this and say, yeah, that works, and yeah, it makes sense. When I breathe deeper, that feels good to me. Just that simple. That frame right there is simple enough that most people can understand. And we're working right now to. So the biggest thing with all this, obviously, is how do you fund it? How do you make this viable for yourself to be able to meet our needs, and how do you make it where they can afford it? So I've partnered with my friend James Lee. So I called him the other day because for whatever reason, you know how synchronicity works. His name came to me through some other people that we mutually know, and I asked him to lunch. I was being real Toastmaster-like, the Toastmaster thing, and networking and trying to meet people, and honestly, that's the biggest thing in having opportunity and creating opportunity. It's relationships. So I called James, I called Jimmy, and Jimmy says to me, "I've got a way to help fund your business and then help fund your projects." And I was like, "Okay, I'm all ears, man. Anytime you're talking like that." So he has come up with the idea that to create a license plate with the state of Alabama. And this license plate essentially is, so the state of Alabama allows nonprofits to create these license plates in order to raise capital, to raise operational money. So what he has created is a license plate that says yoga and love. And it has a girl on it. She's doing a yoga pose, and then you have the 6 digits that you can use to personalize your tag. You can write whatever you want. It's 6 characters, but it's fascinating. So this is something that we could sell. Not only are we selling it as a product, but it has a utilitarian function. It's your license plate. You got to buy one anyway, And so people are possibly more apt to help support us by purchasing something they're going to already need. It does cost more to get personalized. It's like $40 more, but that $40 we actually can use that. Yeah, we can use that money to operate off of. To me, that's a win-win. That's a win for us, and that's a win for other people who want to promote yoga, who support what we're doing and believe in the ideas that we're trying to get across.
That's really thinking outside of the box.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of partnering up with people is you double your brain capacity, you double your potential, quadruple it even if you got lots of people involved. But again, the complexity of joint action. Anytime you add another person, you're adding, their life and all the other things that go along with that, scheduling and that's the biggest thing that I'm learning as I'm digging deeper into this entrepreneurial lifestyle is how do I manage the stress that comes from all these variables? Like there's just tons and tons of variables. And honestly, without a doubt, I have chosen to use yoga and breathing as my means of coping. And it is coping. You're trying to figure out how to deal with these mental stressors. Because, man, some days I get in my head and I get overwhelmed and I want to quit, honestly. I just want to stop. It just doesn't seem viable. It doesn't seem like I can do it, that I have the energy, that it's going to work, that people are going to help me. It just feels like crap. But then when I do yoga or when I start breathing or I start moving my body, if I will move my body, a lot of this will dissipate. And then I'm inspired again. There I go again. I take off again.
That's what I found too. If I move my body, get up off the couch and just start doing stuff or either just going for a walk, I mean, it helps out a lot. And definitely with the breathing as well. One of the things I've noticed about myself is that my stomach is always tight. And I think it's because I'm thinking about something, I'm worrying about something. And it's like I have to constantly make myself, breathe, take deep breaths, and just relax. So I totally understand the breathing. What I wanted to ask you is, we talked about meditation. Can you tell me what is meditation and why should people practice? Is meditation, crossing your legs, saying what what is truly meditating, and why should we practice it?
Meditation is the art or the practice of watching our thoughts, of allowing our thoughts to flow. And what happens a lot of times, the origin of stress is when we fixate on a thought. So let's say we've got something that is pressing, or we have something that we're worried about. Well, a lot of times what our brain does is fixates, because it actually wants to help us alleviate the problem. So it goes through all these different scenarios of how this could negatively impact us, and it will create different ways of handling that. But while we're in that state, we're hyper focused on a very negative thing occurring in the future, and we expand it to multiple scenarios and all these different variables to where we become, again, hyper focused on this. And essentially, if you think of it in terms of like water flow, it's a stagnant pond that cannot flow. Everything in it is like murky and slimy, and it's just stuck, and it's unhealthy, and there's not much potential for growth there, and it's not going. So that's the mind whenever we're stuck in these negative thought loops. And I call them loops because it's really just, you keep thinking about the same thing over and over and over. The way that translates into the body is it creates enormous amounts of cortisol in the bloodstream, and that's a stress hormone, and that keeps us on edge, but it also breaks the immune system down. The immune system can't function properly. The digestion, like we were talking about earlier, the digestion is impaired. So that means you're not passing food through your digestive system, which that creates disease. So all these things
just come from thoughts.
Yeah, it just comes from thoughts. It comes from thoughts. Disease is really dis-ease. I know you've heard that before, but it's dis-ease of the mind, and we can't let go of this thought because it seems so real and so necessary to just play it over because we're worried about, the negative impact of it. But what meditation is is just sitting down any way that's comfortable. Ideally, you want to keep your back straight because that creates support for the whole body. But it's just sitting there, and instead of fixating on that thought and making it into a bigger deal than it is, it's just let it pass on through. And it's not to say that you don't go and maybe take action on something that, like, you don't just think about paying your. So if you're worried about paying your power bill, you don't just stop thinking about paying the power bill. You just go pay it, but you let that worry thought go, because you could say, all right, I'm worried about paying the power bill. Well, I don't really have the money to do it right now. Or what if they cut my power off and then this situation happens? And
are you talking about all these thoughts going on while you're meditating?
Yeah, like these thoughts could go on while you're meditating, or just in normal day-to-day activity. These thoughts are passing through your mind. And then meditation is the formal practice. It's a formal practice of doing. You have to actually do it, of sitting down and watching the mind and letting that thought pass on through, labeling it. Say, the example with the power bill is labeling it as, okay, that's a worry thought, tagging it and letting it roll on through, just letting it pass on through, and then taking action later. That's essentially meditation. Is you're just formally sitting down and allowing thoughts to pass through and observing them. It's just really observation of your thoughts.
A lot of people mention that you should focus on your breath. Do you do that? Focus on your breathing, or do you just kind of think about your thoughts?
Inevitably, you will lose focus on the breath. But the concept of focusing on the breath is it provides an anchor point. It provides a point of reference to sort of snap you out of the daydream that can happen whenever you're sitting there meditating. You're sitting there and, a thought passes through your mind, and it's like we latch onto it, and it just carries us down the track. It's like jumping on the back of a train and just riding it till you realize, oh, wait, I didn't want to go this far. Then you just jump off. And when you jump off, to me, that's coming back to your breath. And that's a way to anchor yourself from getting really lost in thought.
And we shouldn't beat ourselves up if we go off track, right, while we're meditating. Because I know when I started meditating, I used to beat myself up. I shouldn't be thinking about this, or.
No, I mean, there's no reason. And that's a whole nother train of negative thought. If you're sitting there shaming yourself for doing something that's pretty natural. And I think that's the biggest thing, is to remember that the mind is not against us. It's doing its proper function. It's trying to help us. It's on our side. It's whatever that content is can really influence us. So it's just being aware of the content of the mind not try to get the mind to do anything other than what it does. And that's meditation. Meditation is not stopping thought. That's impossible. It's observing it. And the mind is built to think. And it's great that it does, and we're glad that it does.
No, that's cool. How long do you meditate?
I typically will meditate anywhere from 10 minutes to 30 minutes, just depending on how much time I got and what else is going on during the day. But 30 minutes is I would say on the longer end of meditation. After about 20 minutes, your legs are going to go to sleep. But anywhere in that range, 10 to 30 minutes is plenty of time.
I went to the Kyle Cease event, and he encouraged everybody to do an hour, and a lot of people are like, "What? An hour? I'm sitting still?" And I've been practicing, and it's pretty cool. It's intense when it first started, but it's amazing because at first I thought I was gonna sit here for an hour, and then I actually did it, and it was, my mind went everywhere, of course, but just the fact that I sat still for a whole hour, I was just proud of myself because a lot of times us humans have a hard time sitting still, with nothing going on, no radio, no TV, for whatever reason, I think we're afraid to be still, sit still.
The mind, again, loves to be entertained. And we think that entertainment and even satisfaction, pleasure, a lot of these different things, that we think that those things have to come from outside of us. And so we spend a lot of energy, we spend a lot of time, we spend a lot of money trying to entertain the brain, when you can just sit down and have a good old time inside of your own head, and it's really reassessing what's important to you. And if getting clear, if having peace, if having a healthy body, if getting along in your relationships is important, then meditation is an avenue to create all that. And it keeps, if we're constantly looking for those external stimulus to give us, something to do while we're here on earth, all those things can affect our bank account. It can affect our relationships. It can affect multiple facets of our life, which all those things play into our overall health. They play into our overall happiness level. And I think a lot of people don't realize that when they go to entertain themselves or to really just find purpose here on earth, because I think that's a big thing that will come up inevitably as you meditate is, why am I here? What am I doing? What is this whole situation about? What's the purpose of being here on planet Earth? Maybe these thoughts won't come at first, but if you continue to meditate, they'll creep up because you're like, well, why am I doing this? Why am I even sitting here? So I think those are big questions, and they're big questions to answer. And there are, and I, without revealing necessarily my own personal thing, and swaying somebody a certain way, I just encourage people just to sit and figure out their own answers, figure out their own answers to those questions. And meditation is a great time to be asking, or you will inevitably review that, just sitting there.
Yeah. You finally get a chance to when you meditate, you finally get a chance to just sit still and just let your mind not even just your mind, just your true self kind of emerge, so to speak. And that's what I kind of like about it. What I wanted to ask you now, just kind of shift a little bit. Me and you, we talk a lot about, creating our reality and, meditating and thinking about certain things and staying positive. How does words play a factor in creating, a better life, so to speak? The choice of words and how you use words.
We have an inner dialogue that is constantly streaming in our minds, and it's basically ourselves talking to ourselves. And when we're growing up, this inner dialogue is formed by the people around us, whether it be whoever it is, whether it's our parents or whoever's given us care as a kid. This voice is developed, and it takes on the timbre of our own voice. So our parents, depending on how they raised us, that voice was either negative or it was positive. And I think words, the way words affect us, is the story that we're telling ourselves. And we are very, very advanced animals, and we have created symbols, and we've created words and vocal vibrations that mean things. And these words are infused with our energy, whether that's negative or positive. So whenever we're saying words to ourselves or we're talking, that's the vibration, so to speak, that's going on inside of our mind. And the way that that affects us is if we are saying, negative things to ourselves, it's limiting. It keeps us out of situations that would advance us or help us to grow or create more happiness or create depth of relationship. It keeps us away from those things because we don't feel like we can. We don't feel like we're worthy. We don't feel like we deserve it, because of the inner dialogue. And again, that inner dialogue is formed when we're a kid. And the only way to really overcome that, say it's negative, for the sake of argument, let's say it's negative. The only way to overcome that is to recognize that it's even there. And I think a lot of people don't know that that's going on for them until they have an experience where they go, whoa, wait a minute. I'm talking to myself inside of my own mind, and people don't realize that is actually what's occurring. And it's not, me being practical necessarily. There's, you can be practical about things and realistic, but a lot of it's just beliefs and experiences that were ingrained in me to give me a certain voice inside of my head with a certain charge to it, whether it be positive or negative. But that's it. And we think in words. I think we think in words and we think in symbols a lot of times too.
Should we start saying affirmations, or do we just, when we hear ourselves say negative thoughts, should we say counsel? Like, you hear some of the people like Jack Canfield and people like that, kind of suggest. What would you say some of the tips that you can do to kind of be conscious of our words and kind of, I guess, reprogram ourselves to say positive words instead of negative words?
Yeah, recognizing that, hey, that is a negative frame that I'm coming from. I have no real basis for that, and labeling it, just saying, hey, that's a negative word, or that's a negative thought, or just investigating it. Because just because it's negative doesn't mean it's not true. So you could take that and say, all right, now that may be a true statement. Now, how can I proactively go about changing that? How can I take action? And that's the biggest thing is, something, I don't have money in my bank account. That seems like a negative, and that seems like something that could really get me down. I think thinking about it, because it scares me. It has something to do with my ability to feed myself and survive. So it scares me, but I can either dwell on that and continue to talk about that and say that and produce that in my mind, or I can take action and say, all right, now, how do I change that? And shift that to a net positive instead of a negative thing that's just continuing.
How you feel about saying affirmations instead of thinking about, when you hear yourself saying, hey, I don't have money in my account, and then you might fight back on it by saying an affirmation, hey, I'm wealthy, rich, or whatever, repeat that over and over again. Would you suggest anything like that, or what do you think?
I think tempering that, and I might say something like, in that scenario is, hey, I don't have money in my account. I might say, well, I have the skills and I have the ability and I have the power to create money in my account. It may not be in there right now, but I have everything necessary in order to change that. And yes, affirmations are essentially, in my mind, I like to use computer analogies. So I think of affirmations as putting code or reprogramming the mind so that it's running the programs that I want to run, and it's running the situations and scenarios that are just overall valuable to me.
This next question is kind of coincide what I asked earlier about, using your words. So how would you say how do we stop worrying?
How do we stop worrying?
The reason why I asked, because I saw one of your videos about how to stop worrying, and I just thought that was a good video when you was explaining that. I just want you to share that with our audience a little bit.
So how to stop worrying is you don't try to stop worrying. And anything we resist persists. So if you fight the worry, it's going to continue. But so how do we fight worry, or how do we stop worrying? Is we do exactly what we're talking about here. Is we observe, and you allow that worry to pass on through, because it's really just an invention of the mind. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll do a reframe. I will take whatever thought it is, and I will just sort of back out of that and reframe it. So a lot of worry is, well, all worry is future based, and the assumption is I'm not going to have what I need when the time comes, and that's not necessarily true in the sense that we don't know. You do not know what. You can't control all variables, and you can't see all variables. So in that video particularly, I talked about, people helping us. Actually, instead of something going in a way that people won't help us, that people actually would be there in the future. We don't know that. We don't know if they will be or not, or they won't be. But it's just as likely that someone would be there as they wouldn't be there. So I think realizing that for every negative thought, there's an equal and opposite thought, and an equal and opposite potential that could happen. And focusing on that, using gratitude, that's one of the biggest ways to knock yourself out of worry, is to actually begin to be grateful for something. Find some way to shift the focus of the mind away from that scenario. And gratitude is a great way to. Gratitude will spin you out of any negative worry loop, because you just can't worry and be grateful at the same time. They can't exist. And that's another point. That's another point, is learning how to direct our focus. And you can only focus on one thing at a time. And to be able to, almost like a flashlight, sort of shine, and that's the gratitude thing, is you're shining heavily on worry. Well, just kind of tilting that flashlight in the dark space and shine it on gratitude. Our consciousness is like that. It's a lot like a flashlight, and wherever we point it, that's exactly the thing that's going to be at the forefront of our mind.
What is an example of gratitude? Would you write it down? Say, hey, thank you, God, for this, or I'm grateful for this. Sometimes when I find myself practicing gratitude, I feel like I'm just still kind of just talking out of my head and not really feeling it from my heart, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
How do you really do it? I mean, how do you really be grateful? You know what I mean? I hope I don't sound crazy, but sometimes I feel like I'm just saying it just to be saying it. Hey, I'm thankful for this house. I am thankful for this house, but how can I really, feel it?
You want to link it with emotion. And I think that's the thing is, and I think that's what you're saying is, like, I don't feel it. I'm just saying it. I don't necessarily feel it. I guess it's really just focusing on that and trying to emote. We can emote. We can create emotions. Like a common misconception is we think that certain scenarios have to correspond with certain emotions. So if I'm stuck in traffic, I have to be upset about that. There's no other emotion that I could have but anger. That's not true. It's a choice. It's a choice. So if I'm stuck in traffic, I can choose, again, to point my consciousness to a completely different emotion. And all of a sudden, I can be in a blissful state, stuck right in the middle of I-65. It's a parking lot. Ain't nobody going anywhere. And just be happy and be fine with that. Even if there's other scenarios going on. You can't change the present moment. And I think that's another aspect of this whole equation, is being able to be comfortable with the present moment, being able to embrace it, surrender to it, even if it is in opposition to what I want at that moment. The present moment don't care. It just doesn't care. The present moment doesn't necessarily know that I have a 1:00 appointment. It's putting me where I'm at, and I have to be there no matter what. And then the mind wants to, it wants to run to all these scenarios. Well, I'm going to lose that opportunity at 1:00. That person's going to be upset with me. This and that, all these negative effects are going to come of that. And that's just not necessarily true. Who really knows? And honestly, deep down, we all have the same, ability to, and I guess we all have the same ability to sympathize or have empathy towards other people's situation. And as long as we're honest and we're telling the truth, and we say that using this scenario about the 1:00 appointment, when we say to that person, like, hey, I was stuck in traffic, and it was real. It wasn't a lie. It wasn't some fictitious thing. That it's an actual event, and it will come across with congruence, and that person more than likely will be understanding. And if they're not, then whatever, they'll make that choice, and you will be able to deal with whatever consequences come of that too, because you've told the truth. And that honestly, that brings me to a really good point, like looping around to that. As we move deeper into ourselves, as we go deeper into our inner dialogue and how our minds are operating, there's a sense of truth and honesty that emerges, because we begin to see how powerful actually telling the truth is, and we see how common all of our experiences are, and how much we appreciate the truth when it's told to us. And that's the thing that starts emerging. And that's also a superpower. To tell the truth is a superpower. It's a superpower. And it creates so much opportunity for us, because people begin to trust us. People begin to be able to count on us. People begin to be able to trust our word. And as long as we're not worried, and again, it's letting go of the illusion that I'm going to find satisfaction or I'm going to find happiness outside of myself. Whenever I self-reference for my own love and value, I can begin to tell the truth, because there's no scenario where I'm worried about losing love or where there's no scenario where rejection, opportunity, because I know that no matter what happens, no matter what, all the way down to dying, that I'm okay. I am okay with what goes on, because it's, in some regards, it's an inevitable outcome to this whole experience. We die. That's a big revelation that also comes through meditation. Is, wait a minute, no one gets off the planet alive. What? No, you don't. You don't. So temper everything you do with the fact that you're going to die, and know that, and feel that, and embrace that, and not be scared of it. And I think that's the biggest thing. People will run from the thought of death, or the even approaching the subject. That's ludicrous. That's a lie. That's a lie. And that strips power from us. So we end up living alive, almost as a coward,
I think when we going back to the truth thing, I think a lot of times we don't tell the truth is because we're so afraid. And like you said, I think you have to be strong enough to kind of be okay with whatever happen by telling the truth. And a lot of us don't know how to do that, or haven't learned how to be comfortable with whatever happens by me, for once telling the truth, you know what I mean, about something.
I totally agree with that.
It's so interesting, because I know a lot of times we run from, maybe it could be some small white lie, you know what I mean? And you really don't have to do the white lie, but we do it just because we're afraid of rejection, or we're afraid of, backlash, or them not liking us, or they're going to think this of us, so. That's a powerful thing of just telling the truth. And it frees you too, by you telling the truth.
You know the truth in your mind. So if you contradict, if you're in a sense of self-contradiction, it's almost like it's an energy drain. It's an energy leak. So, but if I'm congruent, if there's congruency inside of me and outside of me, there's a sense of authority, there's a sense of power, there's a sense of confidence, there's a sense of reassurance, because there's nothing that is incongruent. It's like everything's lined up and everything is towards that. You're not hiding anything, and there's no guilt or shame. And that's the biggest thing, when you're dealing with particular religions or faiths or something where things are sort of hinged off of, or behavior is hinged on guilt and shame. You don't really solve the issue of, say, altering behavior or moving away from something that's unhealthy. You don't actually solve it. You just hide it. And anytime you hide something, it's not going away. The effects are still there, but they're even more dangerous, because you can't see them. You can't see what's actually going on. and there's a lot of surprises, and there's a lot of negative things that creep up only because things were hidden, out of shame and guilt. And I don't know a human alive that is not dealt with that. Yeah, shame and guilt. It's heavy.
It is heavy. It is heavy. It sounds like a lot of fear, pretty much, when we have those shame. Well, it is fear, when we have those shames. What about fear when it comes to doing something that we want to do? Say, for instance, write a book, start a nonprofit, start a YouTube channel. That's a big thing now. What are some things we can do to overcome those fear of doing something that we really want to do? Say that's deep down inside of our hearts. Because a lot of times, for me, I found myself not doing it because I was so afraid of what people might think, or, they're going to laugh at me if I do this or that, or if I write this, or even just say, I've never done that before, so I'm not going to do it, How do we overcome some of those fears, of what people think, or even fear of I might fail?
Failure, for one thing, is it's relative. If you depends on what you're comparing yourself to, that determines whether you fail or not. So picking something that is doable can help, push you through that failure part. Reframing what failure means, saying, like you say, like your name of this podcast is try to fail. Go for it. Like, try to make a mess of things. And just in doing that, you inevitably learn. And that's the tricky thing about humans is, and something we don't really allow or make a lot of room for, is the ability to make mistakes. We just don't allow each other to do that because, a lot of times there are consequences to making mistakes. There's some things that, I don't want someone to, it's high stakes, like I don't want someone to make a mistake on creating a gas pump or something at the gas station and be like, oh, I'm just doing my best, I'm just trying to figure it out. No, you can dial that in. Go ahead and figure that one out deeply before you bring it to us. But that's not necessarily what we're talking about. We're talking more about, overcoming just our fear and our anxiety of failure. One way you can help mitigate that is to break things down into bite-sized chunks where you're not biting off more than you can chew. And that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing that leads to failure is somebody is very ambitious. They want to be, a superstar. They want fame, notoriety, and money. But nobody got that the second day they tried. No one did. They broke it down in small, tiny steps, and they just methodically pushed through those steps. The way I've learned to push myself is to, number one, set small goals that are achievable daily. And those add up into bigger things. And I've learned to enjoy those small goals. Also, I surround myself with people who are of the same mindset so that I'm not getting any negative feedback from the people around me. I'm getting only, hey, you can do this and we will support you. Or maybe I'm doing this too. Can you help support me? We both push off each other and we can do this, sharing ideas. So I think those two things, breaking things down into small bites and surrounding yourself with people that are encourage you towards the goal. Those are the biggest ways to approach something that you're afraid of doing, and really just making it to where you can succeed, reframing what success is. So like saying, today I need to make 3 phone calls and I will feel successful. I will have not failed today. Well, okay, today I didn't fail. I made the 3 phone calls. And if I don't, then there's some serious reflection as to why. Why did I not make those 3 phone calls?
And be okay with how those phone calls turn out, because sometimes we expect those phone calls to go perfect, and sometimes they might not, and just be okay that you made those 3 phone calls.
Yeah, and not worry. Yeah, like you're saying, there's no attachment to outcome. I don't have an attachment to how this is going to turn out. I just know that I want to do it, and I'm going to make those calls today,
I know for me, when I did my YouTube video, when I was, for my painting, I was so scared to put the video up, and record, because I didn't like my voice. I didn't like how I looked on the camera. And, it was tough. And when I did one video, I was like, oh, I hate this, but, I kept doing it. And, what kept me going is when people started commenting on my YouTube videos and saying, hey, I like this. How did you do this? And I'm like, oh, okay. So then I really looking at how I look, or looking at the way I sound. and they're not judging any of that, and that just kind of kept me going. But I don't think I never would have found that out if I have not, stepped out and made those videos. And making those videos led to, other things too. So you do have to make that step and just step out and just do it, whatever it is that you want to do. Even for this podcast, I mean, a lot of fear, popped up when I wanted to do this, so I just going ahead and do it. And if, people judge it or laugh at me, it's okay. And I've learned that, I went to college, I got my undergrad degree, I got my graduate degree, and I'm just going to look at this podcast just as another degree. You know what I mean? So whether it don't turn out the way I would like it, I got another degree in podcasting, what I'm saying? Just because I learned all the things I need to do to set it up, send it to iTunes, promote it, find out what audio sounds good, what doesn't, learning how to interview people. I mean, I'm learning all this stuff. So it's just a course on podcasting. You know what I mean? So that's one way to look at, some of the things that you want to do. Just kind of look at it as a course, that kind of helped me, move forward.
Well, a lot of times we get caught up in the game of comparison, and we're comparing ourselves. Obviously, you're going to look to the best of the best of the best and say, how do I measure up against that? When that's not the standard. It's that's a level that you could go to if you choose to. But the overall goal for me and myself and the things that I'm doing, am I happy? Am I enjoying this? Is this something that's entertaining to me? Is my experience of this reality one that I look forward to? And those are my measurements. I've figured out my own way of I guess analyzing my experience, and I'm not comparing myself to these other entities. However, I will study these people because it's high level, and I want to get better. At some point, if I wanted to, I could push it to that level. But and this is the biggest mistake everybody makes, is to look at that caliber and just assume that it came natural, that it came without a lot of work. If you're looking at somebody who is very, very, very accomplished or operating in a professional or high level, there is no way to really see all the work that they have done. It's an enormous amount of work, no matter what someone says. And then you just have to ask yourself, was I willing to give that amount of energy to it? And maybe you are, maybe you aren't. And if you aren't, it doesn't matter. You're going to be balanced in some other area that person is lacking in, potentially, because there's sacrifice. There's sacrifice to all that. There's sacrifice.
A lot of times we don't move because we look at other people and we compare ourselves. We don't take the necessary action just because of, look at all they got. I'll never be like that, or it takes a lot of work. And like you said, you don't know where they began or what they did behind the scenes to get where they are. And I know for me, there's a lot of artists that I used to look at, and I'm like, man, how can I get there? Or how can I sell as many paintings of those artists? And I realized that when I started doing my research, these guys painted day and night. You know what I mean? They work, they work their butts off. You know what I mean? So it took them a while to get where they are. And that not just to say with artists, just with anything. When I started doing this podcast thing, some of the top people that I listen to, I mean, their audio sounds good. They talk very well. They articulate their words very well. And I'm like, man, I'm not. How can I get like them? Or I'm not like them. Or so I shouldn't do it. So all those thoughts ran through my head before I decided, I'm going to go ahead and do it. So I think you just have to kind of go ahead and do it and just make that step. And you learn so much. Even if you fail, you have learned so much. That's what I found. Even when I made my YouTube channel, when I made my website, I learned so much just by doing it.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, again, this experience is about just creating a sense of enjoyment. And to me, I like the journey. I like the discovery. I like the learning, and whatever level it does turn out to, or whatever level I'm willing to push it to, I enjoyed the process. And that's another key is, if you don't enjoy the process, if it's an end goal, if there's any aim to a final goal, and that hinging on my satisfaction, man, it's going to be anticlimactic. And then people know that I've experienced this on smaller levels. I haven't, there are a lot of people say you make your first $1 million. When you make it, it's the most anticlimactic thing ever. You're sitting there with $1 million or whatnot, thinking, anybody else that would hear that or have thought of that before, they'd be like, "Wow, that would just be the greatest thing," and I would just, it's like clicking the finish button of life. I'm done. But people that have made that money, they say, "Okay, yeah, it's just kind of like the day before." And I thought I was going to feel something different, but I didn't.
Yeah, I heard that. A lot of people say that.
Yeah, so I know better than to do that. So if I know that, and I can take those people's experience and apply that to my life, then I won't get caught in that trap, because it's a vicious trap, and I think it's very easy to lose sight of why it is that we're doing something. Why are you doing any of this? Why are you making the podcast? Why am I sitting here talking to you? What's the point of these things? And if it's not to enjoy it right now, then it's dangerous. I'm going to be disappointed.
I appreciate you doing this interview for us. I know my audience got some good information from it. Tell everybody, where can they find you, on email or Facebook, and YouTube channel, your website.
So on Facebook, it's just my name, Trent Jones, and then my website is breathechildrenbreathe.com, and you can find out sort of what it is that we do exactly. We have our bios on there. My girlfriend and I have the different products that we're offering as far as teaching goes. That's our website. And my email address is breathechildrenbreathe@gmail.com.
Awesome. What books are you reading lately? What books have you read lately?
What books am I reading? Let's see. Oh, goodness. I've been doing a lot of yoga book reading. I've been doing like anatomy stuff, very specific.
Let me ask you this. What book would you suggest to our audience when it comes to, I guess, overcoming fear? And, this podcast is all about, I guess, following your dreams, doing something that you want, and just kind of overcoming those fears of doing those things. What book would you suggest? Any books that pop up in your mind, right off the top of your head?
Right off the top of my head, I was talking about this book yesterday. Matter of fact, is a book called The Four Agreements. And the Four Agreements, it's essentially how to ensure that you are maximizing your potential as a human by realizing that you are creating your reality. You are creating your belief system, and whatever agreements that you make with the outside world, that they influence you. And also the Four Agreements talks about how you can gain inner strength by holding these four agreements. And I can't remember all the agreements, but that's probably one of the most powerful books out there right now in the way of self-help and just giving you permission to take back control of your mind. I would definitely recommend that book.
I'll definitely put that in the show notes. Well, Trent, I want to appreciate you being on this podcast episode. I appreciate it so much. I thank you. I value all your knowledge. I love talking to you, especially when we're at our meetings and stuff. So, man, I appreciate you being on this call with me. I appreciate it so much. You just don't know how much this means to me. I appreciate it a lot.
Well, thanks, Ahmad. I appreciate you as well, man. I look forward to seeing you soon.
If you enjoyed this podcast, I ask that you hit the subscribe button. Also, feel free to leave a 5-star review, as well as share your favorite episode to your friends and family. This will help us rank higher in iTunes and increase the number of people who listen to the podcast.